Hi, welcome to Leap Taken. This is Mika. Here at Leap Taken, I talk about all things craft related, witchy, law of attraction, manifesting, esoteric, and everything else in between. So, today I am going to talk about how do you end your relationship with a deity. Um, I've had this experience, so I'm going to speak to my personal experience. If there is some other path that you follow where maybe you do something a little differently, or maybe you don't break up, we can get into that too. But let me just start with my own personal experience. So, um, first off, I just want to say I'm grateful that I never made the mistake of getting involved with deities early into my spiritual practice. So I was Wiccan initially, and most of the Wicca 101 books that I followed all said the same thing. They were saying, oh, well, there were certain goddesses and gods, the horned one, for the god, and the goddess, it could be any, more of the Norse or Celtic gods and goddesses. So for some reason, it just never resonated with me. Um, I still continue on the path of being Wiccan, excuse me, but I don't know. It just never got. I could not build a relationship. It just would have seemed forced and phony. Like I was trying just to be a believer, but I really didn't believe. So, all right, years went by before I had any sort of connection with any sort of deity. I was just working off a spirit. I didn't even deal with ancestors as much at that time. So time is going on. Eventually, I develop a deeper relationship with ancestor reverence and so forth. So fast forward, I start, recognizing, okay, I'm getting messages. This feels different. I feel like a specific goddess is reaching out to me. I She was actually, there's more than one, but one at a time did reach out to me, so I was solid with that. So on my own, I've been working with these two goddesses, each one at different times. I decided to, okay, well, why don't we work with this other goddess that I honestly, that was popular, and I don't even say popular. In my circles it was popular. Okay, so I worked with that particular goddess. It did not go as everybody else's experience, which happens, and I can admit that it didn't. Sorry, I didn't have that same experience. Let me say I'm on the phone. I don't know what I just text back. Anyway, um, call you back. I am so sorry. And since you and I both know I'm not going to edit this out, forgive me. Anyway, so work with this goddess, and I didn't have pleasant experiences. It wasn't anything, or I could. I just felt it was lackluster. I felt like there was no connection because she didn't want me, for lack of better words. Like it was a one-sided type relationship. I'm, setting up an altar space for her. I'm trying to appeal to her. I'm doing, meditations where I'm, reaching out to her. I feel like I'm crossing realms. She's letting me witness her. She lets me see her. I can hear music. I can hear, a ritual taking place. I can, excuse me, see, hear, smell, all of it. I'm not participating. I'm just an observer. And she never seemed to have wanted me to move past that. Oh, it was a mistake. Hold on. It was a mistake. Text. I can't text right now because I got these nails on. Yeah, I'm gonna do better. Anyway, so that was my husband. I don't want him to worry because if I don't answer the phone after some time, that's cool for her. Is she okay? What you want, by the way. But anyway, one-sided relationship. She wasn't really like feeling me like that. She didn't totally disregard me or not deal with me. She just didn't do more than let me observe. Um, and I felt like there was a commitment that she was wanting from me that I wasn't prepared to get. Her followers are devout. They're usually They're devout, we'll just say that. So it was time for me to come to a decision on breaking up. I didn't do it right away. I left the altar space up. Um, by the way, before I even began with the altar, all that, I studied, researched all there is to know about this goddess. Not just other people's accounts, but I read books, everything. Well, that is other people's accounts, but I meant like, I didn't just go into a group chat or group forum or YouTube or something like that and just search and see what other people had to say. Which I did do that. I didn't just do that. I did, I read books as well about this by more than one author because I wanted a sort of well-rounded approach. And then I, meditate, tried to, see what she had to say if I tried to reach out to her directly. So yeah, I just don't think we were a good match. And this was a relationship that I sort of, began and I started it. It's not like she came to me or I felt called to her. It was more like I was being exposed to this particular goddess, and I'm like, oh, look what she's doing with others. I wonder if I can have that same result working with her. So, which I don't think anything's wrong with, going into a relationship with the deity that way. I don't think it's being selfish to say, oh, I see all the blessings that they're giving other people. Well, I'd like to have that experience as well. Of course, if you're doing that, you probably is knowing that, okay, well, there's probably something I have to give, some sort of veneration, reverence, sacrifice potentially, um, worship to this particular deity in order to have those blessings. So, they go hand in hand. You understand that. All right, and I did understand that at the time, but to the which degree? See, I already have my tried and true um, goddesses that I work with, that level of divinity that I had been working with, and I felt very good about that experience. So, this was somebody else I was bringing on, and I don't think she wanted me to work with anybody but her. All right, so moving on. Oh, by the way, how do I know this? I am someone who, when you start into a meditation, and ultimately you're trying to go to other realms to work with a goddess, okay, like I was. So it doesn't happen like that all the times. It depends on the experience, the time of day, where I'm at, my diet that day. There's so many other variables involved, but assuming I get there within a few minutes. Okay, once I'm there, typically I'm sitting down or laying down, eyes closed. I'm dropping, if you don't want to do your eyes closed, just relax your eyes to the point where they're almost closed. And you know how you kind of focus on something and then kind of focus out with your eyes? Do that. It's just going to an empty space, as empty as you can get yourself, so that you can shift into this other place. Um, my senses are totally engaged, all of me, third eye, everything, I'm there. So when I was witnessing, it was at night, it was dark, there was a fire, and there were people there was a fire, and this goddess was dancing around the fire, and she let me observe her rituals. But she would look at me, and I felt whenever she would gaze at me, I would get messages. For instance, they were like kind of thought forms that popped into my head while I was doing this vision. And the thought form would be something to the effect of I require this, or I need that. Like those things would just pop in. I didn't go into the vision asking questions or thinking this is what she was telling me. So that's how I knew what would be required. Okay, so once it was decided that after a period of time, and I want to say weeks, months, a month or two, after the fact, that I would not be working with this particular goddess. I wouldn't be working with her, not out of fear, but because I was not willing, which you always have a choice. I didn't want to do what she wanted me to do in order to have this relationship with her. So I disassembled the altar. As I did so, the entire time I was doing it, I was thanking her out loud. I was saying, I thank you for even allowing me for even communicating with me. I am sincerely grateful thank you, I appreciate you, thank you. I was saying these over and over, almost like a chant as I was doing, and I believed what I was saying as I disassembled everything and put everything in separate places. Once everything was done, I cleaned the space. I also used my Florida water. Actually, I used rose water at that time because I remember I had Florida water. I used some rose water after I cleaned it with regular cleaning solution, and I used that to metaphysically, spiritually cleanse the area. I saged the whole room that altar had been in, not just that space, but I saged as well. And when I was doing the sage, the things I was saying, I release you, I release you, I release our relationship, I release you. That's it. Now, that was something I never felt like we got past the first date type experience with this particular goddess. I don't feel like we met up and it never went much further. I felt like we were on perpetual first date level. So I didn't feel the need to do more than what I did. Now, had I petitioned her, I think I attempted to petition her, but it was empty. I felt like I wasn't getting any feedback, so I was like, so we're just not like I couldn't forge this thing with her, and she's like, no, you don't, we don't, it don't work like that. You got to do a little more for my help. So what I did was after I saged and I did the releasing and all that sort of stuff, I continue to work with my other deities. Everything's been cool. I haven't really introduced any other new characters, deities, to my spiritual system. But I lost my train of thought. If I was to have done more petitioning, I felt like she responded, but I still didn't want to work with her. Let's say one of my tried and true goddesses I was working with, if I decided I didn't want to work with them anymore, it would be a more involved experience. I would do all the things I just said, but first I would write a heartfelt letter to them, to whoever it was I was working with or wanting to no longer work with, and it would be basically a breakup letter, and I would write that, and I would be very mindful about the paper I was using. Maybe use parchment paper. I would be very funny about the ink I'm using, the color of the ink I was using. I would throw that pen away when I was done. All very deliberate steps. And being very respectful and loving and kind the entire process. You're dealing with divinity. So you want to sever a connection with the divinity, you better be gracious and kind. All right, so I would do all that. Once I do that, I would probably, I would have, at that point, I would have had a candle going. Probably a white and a black. So basically white, white is a general color for candle magic, but in my sense, I would be wanting specifically white to just represents peace, harmony, love, very light, light energy. And the black candle, I would go for the releasing, as well. And I want these things to be burning at the same time. And I'm gonna use specific oils. I'm trying to think what type of oil I would use for that. I would probably research a little bit more, but off the top of my head, will probably use two different oils. For the white candle, I would probably go with a lavender essential oil, blend maybe with a carrier oil. And for the black candle, I want to say, I'm thinking frankincense, but I might do like a cinnamon oil, and here's why. This is why this is coming in my head. So I might make like a cinnamon oil, and the reason I would do that is because, I want this to move quickly. I want to sever these. When you're going through a breakup, you don't want to. Hopefully, you don't want to drag it out. I kind of want to wrap this up. When this burns, it's done. That's it. And one of the things that cinnamon, outside of prosperity, a lot of us are familiar with that, but it's about being rapid, fast results. So I would apply that oil to the black one. I would have my cauldron. As they burned, I would most likely burn my letter. If not during the candle burnings, right afterwards, but probably during. I would just let that letter burn. After I've read the words out loud, I write them, I would read them out loud as the candle burns. You know, ending, of course, in that letter, I'm going to be saying something about releasing. I release you, I release you, I thank you, I'm very gracious for your help, and I release you. Something along those lines. And then I would burn the letter and let the candles burn, say something to the effect of, you know, once the candles burn, with peace and love, this connection is severed. And I would, you know, point to the white and then point to the black. And, you know, so would it be, so it is done. And just let the candles burn at that point. You can sit there and just, you know, sense the energy, you know, the connection, the time. You can see it in your mind's eye where it just, you know, kind of fades out. Eventually, maybe it all just gets black. I would want to do this this spell or ritual at night. I wouldn't want to do it during the day, probably depending on the type of, you know, deity you're working with. But I would go at night because I would want that. I want the darkness around me at that point, because it's sort of somber. You know, it's the end of something. So, you know, that's if, you know, this is something I would do more of if I was like a little bit more involved. I don't feel like I said, what I was working with, we never really got past the first exchange. I made attempts to make it something more, but she never allowed more. Um, so that was the end of that. Oh, and same deal, disassemble. I would do all that work and then disassemble the altar if you set up an altar space. So, and also going forward, I would be mindful not to evoke that particular goddess. I would be mindful not to be very cavalier about my connection with them. I'm not being cavalier now. I feel like let me get some more light in here. I feel like she was, oh, I can't get the light on. Anyway, I feel like she was not do. I don't think, you know, she is who she is, that particular goddess. And I will say this, that she had, I didn't have any ethnicity or ancestral lines to those who majority follow this goddess. And maybe that had something to do with it. Yes, I think that does matter sometimes. I know we don't always want to hear that because we want to just do what we want, and me included, but it may have, I have my thoughts that maybe there is some connection to that. Maybe you get more bang for your spiritual buck, so to speak, by working with deities that are commonly from where your ancestors are from. So it's interesting if you're mixed with mixed lineage like myself, then which one? Is it more of this or more of that? I'm mostly African, but I'm a good amount as well. Well, we're just gonna say European. It's dissected all up and through, so we'll just say European. But anyway, but yes, will I eventually feel some connection to European gods? I hope so. I would love to have that experience, but right now I'm dealing with those that were going to be considered African, and I don't think that's by accident. I think that's for a reason. I was very open. I wasn't thinking about race. I wasn't thinking about ethnicity when I was doing my spiritual practice when I first started off in Wicca. I just didn't get a connection. It just didn't feel real to me. And you can't fake something like that. You don't answer to anybody. It's all about you. And if you don't feel it, you don't feel it. But and you know, if had I gone that far, I'm glad I didn't have it. Like I said, if I had gone and forged some sort of relationship and forced it, it wouldn't have been authentic. And I would have needed to, even if I didn't feel like I was being fed well spiritually, I did create a connection. So I would want to sever that connection. So I would just give this little piece of advice. When you are working with these different goddesses and gods that you come across in whatever pantheon you're working with, I don't see anything wrong with being curious and wanting to learn a little bit more. Just be respectful and always be sincere and gracious. That's all you have to do. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And just, you know, make an effort to just sort of sever the connection if you don't want to sever the connection. But you don't want to have a deep relationship with this. You just want them sort of on demand. Maybe you give them a little reverence here and there, but you're not really looking for something serious. We'll say that you're not looking for a serious commitment. Um, or maybe you already have a serious commitment with another deity and this is a side one. That's fine if that's what you want to do. Um, just be consistent on how you handle your side god, side goddess. Just be consistent. That would be my advice. One of the things is I don't just deal with one goddess, and I'm still working my way to working in with the masculine, the God energy. That's something actually I can feel the pull, and I'm just trying to decipher who, give it a name, give this entity a name. But that energy is there. It's all around me. Of just sort of kind of reaching, my full balance and duality of, this goddess or goddesses, and maybe more than one god. We'll see. It could be more than one. I'm still working on that, and that takes time. I don't rush it. Where am I going? I let it unfold. I'm very interested. I just journal the things I feel, the messages, the symbols and signs that I come across, and eventually I'll get a whole picture. But I like the dance. I like the flirting, so to speak, and it's not sexual, but it's the flirting with the understanding of it all, the knowledge. I'm comfortable with that. It challenges me to be more patient and to be focused. So I'm okay with that. Just trying to decipher who's reaching out to me. Now, eventually, I'll do a full reading and I'll get my answer. But let them come to you, however, they want to. It's divinity. Have some respect. Have a little patience. That's how I look at it. But anyway, so yeah, so I'm all about having. I don't the well, I don't worship just one deity at all, or give reverence to. The word worship bothers me a little bit. It just the way we use it. I'm comfortable with me because I know my meaning and my understanding of worshiping. Worshiping to me is not like it doesn't hurt, you know. It doesn't feel sacrificial. It feels like I want to do it. How is it a sacrifice if I'm willingly giving my energy, my time, water on my altar for them, or a certain candle at a certain day, or a certain incense, or oils, or food, or whatever, alcohol. It just feels like, oh, well, let me just take care of them. It doesn't feel like sacrifice to me. That's not how I view it. So, but that's just me. Anyway, so hopefully this is helpful to you. It's really not a difficult process. It happens, especially where we are in today's time. A lot of us don't have connections to our ancestral ties from a spiritual point of view, and especially people of color. It's very difficult to, for some of us to even have the right connections. You may start off with this path, and the person who is guiding you can only take you so far, and you're kind of on your own after that. So you have bumps in the roads. You do what they do, but that's not really for you, and you don't know that until you learn a little bit more and realize, this is not a good relationship I have working with this particular deity. So, just because they were working with them, maybe that's not who I should be working with. Or you read books, and, like me with the Wicca. Had I just, went with one of the Celtic goddesses or gods or whatever, it would not have made, it would, I don't want to speak negatively about it. I mean, I don't know, but I would have been forcing something that wasn't right, You want to feel good, when you feel bad, you want to go to this deity and unload and let them fill you up with positivity or blessings. When you feel good, you want to be grateful and thankful to them. So there needs to be something authentic and real there. So that's all I got to say about that. So thank you for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already. Again, I'm Mika, this is Leap Taken, and thanks again for watching.